Hello and welcome to another recording, and in this recording we're going to look at how to run a report for dimension balances. This was added in August of 2019. You can use it to create a summary style presentation of dimensional balances. It's very customizable. You can choose any GL account, a group of GL accounts, or a range of GL accounts. You can include or exclude statistical accounts, and depending on your access, you can choose different combinations for programs, checkbooks, and funding source. And you can also add different dimensional ability. It's a valuable tool to use to be able to identify anomalies and vendors with encumbrances. So let's go into Intacct and take a look. From your likely home screen like this, or from any page in Intacct, you go up to the application menu, General Ledger, and you're going to click on Dimension Balances. You can also click on the gold star if you want to add it to your favorites, so you can access it from the favorites bar located up here. You can see the report. If I change it to General Ledger, only those things that I starred would be there. But we're going to go there through the menu, as most people do. Select Dimension Balances. And with just about every other report you'll find running in Intacct, the first thing you're going to tell Intacct is what period of time do you want to run the report for. It will always default to current month and whatever the current day is, the as of date. If the current month is what you want to report on, then we can leave this alone. If you want to report on a different period of time, you can choose from the long list of different periods of time, or you can override these two settings by typing a beginning and an ending date for the period of time you want to get back in your report. For this video, I'm just going to go ahead and use the current month. The next thing we're going to do is we want to tell it some filter information. What information are we looking to get back now that we know the period of time? It will always default to the reporting book accrual as being selected. And the accrual book is what all of our activity posts to: our income, our expenses, and any balance sheet activity like cash coming in, cash going out. You can select an other book. If we click there, we have one other book. It's the encumbrance journal. So if you wanted to focus on encumbrances, you can go ahead and select that. And now we can see that it's selected. It's checkmarked to combine both accrual and encumbrances. So if we ran the report and continued doing this, we would get balances that combines both of these things. For simplicity's purposes, and for just to be able to read the reports, I would never run a report where we combine those two books. Either look for expenses or look for encumbrances. Don't do both. In this one, we're going to look at posted expenses, so I'm going to go ahead and clear out the encumbrance book. In the next area, we can select a range of accounts or a single account. So if I only wanted to look at utilities, I type utilities here, select that account. It puts that in the account from and the account to box. You can select multiple accounts. So if we had some accounts that didn't fit within a certain range, since the range is going to go in numerical order, we could come to here and add utilities and tribal employees if this was the information that we wanted to get back. And now we could run the report with that stuff there. We could choose all accounts or a group of accounts. For this one, we're going to do just utilities. If you use statistical accounts, you can go ahead and click that. And if we want to ignore inactive accounts, you can use that too. Likely not a selection that would impact anybody's reports for actually either of those things. since statistical accounts are only used by one program for the tribe currently. And now we get into dimensions. So in the little cover page at the beginning of this video, I mentioned the word dimensions a lot. And this is where we're going to start to filter the reports to tell Intacct what information do we want to see. So we can pick a program, and I have a program group called Indirect Programs. You can choose your own, or if you have multiple programs, you can choose all. But this is going to be a required field for users, so you want to have something selected, whether it's all, your program, or one of the programs you may have access to for those that have access to multiple programs. Checkbook's going to work the same way. You can choose a group, such as all, a singular checkbook, or if you have a group of checkbooks that was made for you, you can choose that group. I'm going to choose checkbook 2 for us. These two fields are required. Program and checkbook is necessary for this report. You can choose a funding source if you wanted to specify one. If you have a funding source group created, you could choose that too. Or if you wanted to use all funding sources, you could leave this blank, and any funding source that is assigned to the program and checkbook combination would get included in this report. I'm going to go ahead and leave it blank. For those of you that use customers, this is your chance to choose a customer or a group of customers. Same thing for vendors, employees, items, and class. All of these we're going to go ahead and leave blank. And now we can choose dimensional values. It's a required area. We have to have something selected here because the report's going to be built on this dimensional value section. And so what we're telling it is, for the program group I selected, the indirect cost program group, and checkbook 2, we want to build a report that's going to group on program, account ID, and vendor. To select or remove dimension values, from the left side are the things that are available, which you can see is a lot of different stuff. You can just click on the blue arrow and that'll add it over to the report. It'll add to the bottom, and then you can drag it around to order it the way you'd like to see it. But whatever's first is what's going to be the primary grouping for the report. We're only choosing one account, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the two that were added and just go by program ID and name, and then by vendor ID and name. The report isn't limited to any certain number of categories. You could select all of these if you wanted to. But I'm going to do this. It's a very small, clean report with that information. Once we're done, we click done. Now we can select how we want to view this. Side by side, cascaded. We can include to show subtotals, and that would do a subtotal based on the first dimension we picked. So we can start to see a total, and in this case it's going to be by program. And then a grand total, the overall return on whatever we're looking for. If we're going to print this report, depending on all the information we've picked, we can choose portrait or landscape. Landscape would be a good view to use if we're picking lots of columns, so that it'll look much better on the report. And of course, you'd want to choose fit to one page wide for printing, so that you can have one sheet of paper instead of multiple that your report might run across. You can add titles to the report, custom titles. So if this is going to be a report you deliver to someone within your program, a committee or council, you can appropriately title it so it's very clear of what information it is you're trying to communicate. So with what we've selected, we have the current month, we have the utilities account selected, indirect programs is our program, checkbook 2. We want to look at the program ID and vendor name for this report. And And we have cascaded, show subtitle, show subtotals, show grand total. And let's click view. So this report will separate out, since we chose vendor first, the two main groupings, program. The two main groupings are on the program, and then below those we see the vendors that they've used for the month that this report was created. And then we see the total cost of expenses by those vendors. So it's a very easy report. If there's data that returns within the period of time you selected, you could click on these amounts and be taken to the general ledger report to further look at those to determine if this is from one purchase order or multiple, that kind of deal, or find out what the payment was for. So this is the cascading report, which is very nice and clear. If we customize this, and instead of cascaded we choose side by side, well, side by side, notice that show subtotals goes gray, meaning it's not going to give us as subtotals by the program. So let's click view. Now instead of separating out the two programs, it's all run together or side by side, and all we have is now the grand total of those expenses. This would work for conserving space if we're going to export this to Excel, or for printing purposes if we didn't want all the extra fields. Now we can run the same report, but let's change the dimension values. We're going to remove all this stuff and click done just to sort of reset this. But now let's use vendor ID and name, and then program ID and name. We're just going to switch those two fields. We'll go back to cascaded, which is much more appealing whenever we have information like this. Click view, and instead of summarizing it by the program, now it's summarized by the vendor, where we can see first the vendor, then the program or programs that are using that vendor, and their cost all the way through. This report you can view, you can print so it'll go to a PDF, process and store so it'll run offline, but these reports run pretty fast so that shouldn't be needed. Email it to people within your program or whomever you choose, and then of course you can always export to Excel or CSV or text. The add to dashboard and memorize options won't be available to you. So once you have your report, you're ready to go find out whatever information you're looking for. And the next time you come back to run a dimension balances report, the options you selected down here for formatting and presentation will be saved. So you can continue to use those, or if you're going to change the report, keep that in mind so you can change this information to fit whatever you're looking for. As always, if you have any questions or requests for different videos, you can contact me at my email address or reach me at the finance office. Thank you.